when we spoke the first time, I think, where you talked about how sovereignty is fractal in a way, that you can have sovereignty as an individual, and then there's also a level of sovereignty in a small group, and then in a larger group, and then in a society, in a nation, civilization.
Yep, that's right. So what we're describing can be described as the characteristics of sovereignty.
So would you describe sovereignty as a mastery of all these different levels of discernment, attunement, etc.? Or is this kind of a separate aspect of it?
It's actually a little bit oblique. So what I would say is that in order to achieve sovereignty, one must use these particular capacities in the domain that you're considering. Sovereignty is a measure of the relationship between one's capacity and the conditions that one is in. So, for example, when I have learned how to juggle, you might say that I have sovereignty within a particular context of juggling. But let's say, for example, I'm trying to juggle while riding a unicycle. I may not yet have sovereignty in that domain. Sovereignty has to do with a kind of a longitudinal ability of your current state to respond to a set of challenges such that your continuing ability to respond to those challenges is on some level of steady state or upgradient, which is to say that I can keep doing it without losing my ability to keep doing it. So these two pieces fit together. They're not reducible to each other.
So would you say that sovereignty and mastery are kind of the same thing or not really?
Feel like so now we're in a subtle state of discernment. So I'll actually apply it. I feel like there's a distinction, but I feel like the distinction is subtle, so that they are close, which is to say that for most purposes, you can probably use them interchangeably, but there is a distinction. And so it's important not to think that they are in fact actually interchangeable. I think if I can get a little bit of a better hint as to where that distinction lies. Well, I said that these two stories are oblique, meaning that they're related to a different set of things. Mastery relates to an arc of skillfulness. So I'm going to give that in more detail. When you enter into a particular practice, a particular relationship to reality, juggling, in the beginning, you have no skillfulness. Right? So you're really just at the basis of raw, uncertain discernment. As your discernment increases and your attunement increases, you begin to enter into coherence. What happens is your skillfulness increases. Your ability to move energy through your instrument to get signal is higher. As your skillfulness increases, I'm going to describe a particular transformation. I'm going to call it artfulness. The movement from skillfulness to artfulness has to do with that transition into embodiment, meaning that you've reached an adequate level of discernment, attunement, and coherence and clarity that it's actually becoming your ability to access this level of insight has moved into a space of kind of being easy and being enduring under larger and larger challenges. So what I can say now is that your sovereignty at artfulness, your sovereignty in this particular domain has actually expanded. Your ability to do has expanded. And then mastery is when you're actually now able to use this capacity to build further capacity under duress, under harder domains. So the arc from skillfulness to artfulness to mastery really very much lives on this learning loop. Sovereignty comes at it obliquely. It comes at it from the point of view of, in a given circumstance, in a given moment, what is the relationship between your capacity and the environment that you're in? So if you have achieved mastery, then also you will be sovereign at the level of your mastery. So let's go back to juggling. If I've achieved mastery of juggling, and what I'm doing is juggling, then I have sovereignty in the domain of juggling. If I've achieved mastery of juggling, but what I'm doing now is trying to use to juggle while riding a unicycle, my sovereignty in this moment is actually quite low. But so I have not achieved mastery of the new domain. I've only achieved mastery of the subdomain of juggling, maybe juggling and riding a unicycle. So there's a relationship between the two. The sovereignty has to do with the ability to maintain my ability to respond to my environment in the context that I'm in on an ongoing basis. And it will use my mastery, my skillfulness, of which there's many dimensions, in that process.
Right. So to simplify it, it seems like Mastery is more about skillfulness and understanding of a certain domain, whereas sovereignty is more about your ability to make choices in response to whatever is happening.